Thanks, buddy. Hi, folks. My name is Tommy T., and I am an alcoholic. And just before I was getting up here, Dave told me his nickname around here is Inappropriate Dave. And I said, oh, how fitting. They give good nicknames down here. I've had a lot of fun with him and his wife since they picked me up. And I always get assigned the characters. It's great. I bring what I have, you know. And, no, not your wife. Your wife's the doll. It's you. Don't try to push that off. But I do want to say some thank yous. I've been having a wonderful time. Everybody's been so kind and everything. And the committee, I know what you guys go through and trying to organize alcoholics. It's kind of like trying to herd cats, you know. I mean, it's a little difficult. The hosting has been great. But the speakers, man, it's great. You know, when I first came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't identify with a woman speaker. I heard a couple of older women, and their drinking was not the crazy 80s, 70s, 80s kind of stuff I was doing. And I was like, I think I'd be afraid to drink with a couple of these girls here. I mean, and I'm definitely not doing any speed with you, honey. That's not happening. But it's been wonderful. And of course, my man Chuck, he's always great. And, love him. He's a good man. And, in the back, our tape of Bob, I've heard a lot of, talks about Bob and what our tapers do. I'd like to call you a digital archivist. You know, good or bad, he's going to have it on tape, so it works against you sometimes. But then also, I've done some service I was the chair of New York Intergroup. And so to the folks doing service from the Intergroup here, they're doing a bang-up job. You don't know how lucky you are to have such organization there and that wonderful table out front. Really nice. But from my heart, I know there's a lot of older AAs here. Anybody with a date that predates mine, which is April 8th, 1995, thank you for the life you've given me. They say beyond your wildest dreams. I was not dreaming about a life like this, you know. So just before I tell you where I'm from and all, and this is for me, I hope it offends no one, but I'd like to start out with a little prayer that I'd like to read before shining, because I want me to pull out of this and just let God take it, because if I do it, it's going to get all messed up. It's just the way it goes. But this is a prayer. It was written by an overeating rabbi who used our 12 steps to overcome his issue. And an old time of Bob B. from Minnesota suggested a book for me. It was The Sacred Recovery, The Sacred Art. And it was a prayer in there, and I said, man, that is exactly what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I hope you indulge me here. My God, the soul you have placed in me is pure. I am free to live today differently than yesterday. Because it is pure, I am free to live without the past burdens and past habits, past fears, past mistakes, and past failures. I am free to look at my past without repeating it, to examine for it lessons to be learned and amends to be made, to draw from it what guidance I can to live differently today. My God, may I use this gift of freedom to further my capacity to serve you by serving your kids with justice, compassion, and humility. I don't care where the origin is. That one just touched my heart when I read it, and I read it all the time. I try not to memorize it, because when I memorize it, I start to parrot it, and it doesn't mean as much to me, so that's fine. So we can get rid of the prop now. Just wanted to let you know I had a big book, and because I, too, am a proud participating member of the Decker Avenue Step Group, and we're a 12 at 12 group. I hear there's a lot of people here from 12 at 12 groups, and that's a great thing. And, we're a smaller group, but we've been around. I've been a member there for 29 of my 31 years here, and I wouldn't have it any way. I've tried to leave that group probably about 50 or 60 times, but I come from a line of sponsorship that says, yeah, you can leave. You just can't leave with a resentment, so. I do a little inventory. I see it's all me. I go back and make amends, lick my paws a little as the elder statesman there, and say I'm sorry to the group and come back. You know, it's really humbling year after year. And but if you're ever in New York City, visit in New York, you make a wrong turn, you get on the Verrazano going the wrong way, pay that $23 toll, you might find us. We meet on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. And but I'll tell you, if you come to us and you're suffering from alcoholism, you're going to get a warm handshake. You're going to get a real bad cup of coffee. But you're going to get a free big book or any literature you want. And you're not going to leave there without 5 phone numbers and people asking you for yours. Because we understand how hard it is to make that first phone call in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're not going to stalk you, although some of the younger members do. They're still in that evangelical stage of recovery. You got to do it this way, you know. But if I exchange numbers with you, I'm just going to send you a text the next day, let you know I'm thinking about you. How you doing? If you need to call, give me a call. And man, people did that for me when I came in, and there was no way. I couldn't even raise my hand in Alcoholics Anonymous and say, I'm Tom T., I'm an alcoholic. I was so full of fear. 36 years old when I made it to you guys. I got sober at 35. But I got sober through an outpatient program. I didn't want to come to Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody dreams of coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, it was the last stop on the train for me. But the childhood I lived, the things I did, there was no place else for me to go. I had burnt every bridge. I was not getting invited to conventions in 1994, believe me. I was invited to court appearances and you know, family court appearances and jails, but I was not invited to any nice places like this, that's for sure. I don't know. I heard a lot of my story from the other speakers this morning and last night. And whether they're wearing a skirt or pants, I get it. I get it. You're my people for sure. Just never feeling right. Always feeling different. Always feeling less than. You know, when we talk about emotions or feelings and things like that, fear in me shows up in a tightness of chest, and I can remember it probably to 3 and 4 years old having that experience. See, I watched alcoholism take a very good man, my father, and he was just an average bang-up working man. When I first remember him, probably 2-3 years old, I can remember it, but I watched the gradual change that happened over the next 10 years or so, where it progressed, you know, to a place where I hated the man. I feared the man. I got physically beat by the guy. I saw him beat my mom. I saw him sexually harass my mom. I'll use harass. That's very kind. But I saw a lot of things I shouldn't see as a young kid. I heard a lot of things I shouldn't hear. And it just made me feel different than all the other kids. And I love some of the ladies that were saying, because I thought, like, did anybody do this stuff before they drank? But I was a liar, a cheat, and a thief way before. And I did a lot of lying to my parents because I wanted them to love me, and I didn't think they did. Bottom line, right? I would come home. I was a pretty good athlete, and I'd say, Dad, I hit 3 home runs. I hit 2 home runs and a triple. That's pretty good. I had 7 RBIs, but I had to say 3. And then they put it in the paper the next day, and I'm an effing liar and getting hit for it. But I think it's his fault. I don't see any of the things we see here. So I'm justifying a rip-roaring binge that's coming up, and I don't know. But it's going to start at about 11 years old, and it's not going to stop. You know, life growing up like that, full of fear of your father. That door closes, you know, the car door closes about 7:30. I'm not at bed at 7:30, but I'm under those covers hoping, please don't open my door. Please don't open my door. And, well, with a couple of guys named Jimmy, yes, it was an Italian neighborhood, and they asked me, hey, Tommy, we're going to go get some beers. You in? I said, yeah, I'm in. Now, mind you, I spent years saying I'd never be like my father. I will never do to a family what he's done to us. Every problem I had up until that point in my life was my father's. It wasn't mine. And so we back then it was a trusting world. It was 1970. I'm going to date myself a little bit here. You know, you could write a note to the local market because they knew you. They knew your mother. They knew your father, and you could just say, you know, let Tom buy 3 quarts of Miller, love Millie. And they're like, okay, you know, put it in the bag and all of this. But as we're walking down there, well, first they told me you're going to have to steal some money. I said, no problem. I was already on that. I knew where the money was. I grabbed a few bucks. We went down. They made me get it. And I was the shortest. Maybe if I was 5 foot, I was a lot at 11 years old. And gave her the note. And when we were walking down there was this junkie in my neighborhood, Glenn. And back then, junkies were good. They hid in the buildings. They hid in the parks. Not Glenn. Glenn's out on the middle of the street, and he's just catching his nod but not falling down. You know, everybody's just like crossing the street to walk around him and things like that. He would steal from this house and try to sell it to the house next door. I mean, he had no shame in his game, you know. And he came out of the nod, and he said, where you guys going? And we said, we're going to go get some beers. And he said, drink them warm through a straw. You'll get messed up quicker. Back then, we followed directions. Right? I mean, you come into AA and some guy with 25 years say, hey, son, you're new? Get a sponsor. Get a home group. Do these 12 steps. Save yourself a lot of trouble. I got this. Right? But that junkie on the corner, that's my life coach. That's going to be my mentor. I'm following him to the gates of hell, you know. And so when the girl gave me those beers, I said, and I need 3 straws. And she just tilted her head to the side, and you said, your mother drinks with straws? I said, she's got a problem, and I grabbed the straws, and we ran out of there, you know. But the funny thing, the only reason I tell that story is because the first time I drank, I instinctively took the cap off the bottle and threw it away. The other guys put it in their pocket. Now, I didn't notice that when it happened, but I remember that night as vivid as anything. They held on to it. I guzzled mine. Took as much through the straw. That was going too slow. I chugged it down. They weren't even halfway done. They start to put their cap back on. I'm like, what are you doing? They said, Tom, it's Friday night. Tomorrow's Saturday. We got more. I pushed one guy down. I said, I'll get more money. Don't worry about it. I take his. I drink it. Now, my whole drinking career was just to get nice. Just take that tightness of chest away from me. But I always overshoot nice. I go to sloppy and rowdy real quick, you know. But I made like a technical or a tactical error there. I went after the smaller kid first. And by the time I went after Bigger Jimmy threw me a beat. And this could sum up my 24-year drinking career. I woke up. I was supposed to be home when the street lights go on. I don't know if they have that out here, but, you know, when street lights go on, you better be on the front porch when you're that age, you know, so your parents know where you are. I didn't even know where my front porch was. I woke up out of a blackout. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock at night, something like that. I knew I was way late. I was going to catch a beating when I got home. I already had a fat lip. I had blood on my shirt. I had vomit on my shirt. I had a cigarette burned. I didn't even smoke cigarettes. I'm like, what, are they burning me after they beat me? What is this? This is a rough crowd, you know. My boom box was missing. I had an 8-track boom box player, you know, and I didn't know what happened. I went home. I took that beating and curled up in a ball because I know defensive beating taking, you know, being the son of an alcoholic. And while he was hitting me, I was like, I don't care. That was great. I'm doing it again. I didn't become an everyday drinker right away. I mean, not a lot of us do right off the bat, but I became an everyday thinker. It was all I could think about, where I was going to get some more money. How was I going to do it a little better, not to get caught, not to take that beating? What could I do? I mean, I started getting inventive and hiding ladders with a rope on it outside my window and stuff. I mean, I was good, you know. I got away with some stuff. Probably about half, and half was enough to get caught for, believe me. But I loved it. And not my favorite part of my story, but you folks were nice enough to invite me down here, and I think we owe it to anybody that's new here to tell some of the things that we did. Because I've heard over 100 fifth steps since I've been here now. I've been working with guys for about 29 years here, and nothing's unique. You know, so if you're sitting in this audience and you think you've done something that nobody else has done, I doubt it. It's got a name. Somebody named it before you, you know. And but boy, my drinking, in pursuit of drinking and other things, I did things that to me were the worst. And they might not seem that bad to some people, but to me they were the worst. And one of those things that always burnt a hole in my soul is I had a grandmother that loved me like unbelievable. You know, when Dad beat up the house and ripped up the house, Mom would scoop us up and bring us to her house. And the boys back then, there was 4 alcoholic brothers. They would never go over the threshold of Grandma's house out of respect. So once you smelt mothballs, once you walked in that house, you were safe. And she just taught me and loved me. And she was my higher power for the first 5 years of sobriety. That's how much I love Grandma. And Grandma was dying of cancer. But Tommy needed a drink. So I stole money from my grandmother. And when she asked me about it, I said, no, Grandma. I looked her right in the face. And I said, no, Grandma, I would never steal from you. I love you too much. 16 years old. Burnt a hole in my soul. It's like somebody took buckshot and shot right through my soul. I could still see her face like that, as I tell you right now. 17 years old, I got my girlfriend pregnant. It's a little pattern with me. And her folks were religious, and we put that boy up for adoption. His name is Matthew. He's 48 years old, and I've never met him. And that still stings today. I have a letter for him in my jewelry box. I have a picture of the day I held him before we said goodbye to him. But it's the things I do. A marriage at that age would have gotten away in my drink. I can't have it. There were terminated pregnancies back then that I was man enough to pay for, but I wasn't even man enough to go with the woman to support her on her darkest day. And I just move on to the next. If you were foolish enough to be my friend, I would steal from you, I would lie to you, and I would let you down. If you were foolish enough to fall in love with me, that just went on steroids. Because I'd keep telling you how sorry I was to get back in your good graces so I could do it again. And I got to tell you, again, in 1985, another girl got pregnant. This time I tried to get married. When she was 8 months pregnant, she was on me about my drinking. She was pounding my chest not to go out, and I just left and never turned back. I didn't meet that boy until I was sober with you guys. And I got to tell you, I'd like to think I had all this guilt, shame, and remorse back then. But when I still had alcohol, there was no guilt, shame, and remorse. I would get twice as drunk on Father's Day, 3 times as drunk on Christmas, and blame all you folks. I was a professional victim. I could spin anything. I would go to the bar and tell you she's not letting me see my son. I wouldn't say that I'm not paying child support, that I'm not getting an attorney to try to see my son, that I'm making no effort. I'm hiding if I see any one of her family. I'm not telling you that part of the story. I'm shaping it to make me feel okay with the bum that I am. There were many, many fights. I played bass guitar in a punk band up in New York City in the 80s. From what I remember, it was a lot of fun, but I don't remember much, so I'm not going to lie to you guys. But it was crazy, and the worst 5 years of my drinking were 90 to 95. And I didn't do my most drinking in 90 to 95. I became a binge drinker because I was trying to put my life together based on self-will. One thing I know, I should get the tattoo, self-will. My life went on self-will can hardly be a success. And I was trying to rise the ladder at work, and I started as a janitor. I made it as high as fireman in the boiler room, but my life was coming apart. And I just knew I had to stop drinking. I had gotten arrested about 4 times, and I had 2 DWIs at that point. And a lot of other things had come into the picture, along with my drinking. So I tried a little bit of controlled drinking. Problem with a guy like me, and I think this entire auditorium, is we can't enjoy our drinking if we're trying to control it. And if we're enjoying it, we ain't controlling it, that's for sure. And that's how it went. So I give you a little glimpse of that. I mean, I was 30 at that point, and, drinking wasn't fun anymore. Drinking was always fun. Then it was fun with some problems. Now it's just problems. When I'm thinking about drinking, like while I'm drinking, it's not good. It's not good. I never went to AA. I had a couple of forced counseling sessions, but never went to AA at that point. So I'm drinking in a place called the Blue Manor. It's an old man's saloon, a gin mill, sawdust on the floor, smells of beer and urine. I mean, you can get a hard-boiled egg. We called it a chicken dinner for 25 cents. You could stay there for days. It was great. It was my perfect place. I was really the king of the Armory Inn. It was me, the Blue Manor. It was me and 3 65-year-old men. I mean, this is where I was at 30. And I would be up there. And if a young lady came in, all bets were off. This is great. I got 3 65-year-old guys. If I can't make this work, where am I at, right? I got a little dive apartment down the street. So I'd be able to stop my drinking a little bit. I'd get a 6-pack of beer on credit, because I got no money. And I'd invite the young lady down to my house. And rigorous honesty, right? She didn't have to be a young lady. A lady. Any woman. Not even a lady, a woman. Females were preferred. And so we'd go down, we'd have a romantic evening, because I wouldn't be doing all the things outside of somebody else's supervision that I normally do. I would wake up the next morning. I would know her name. She would still like me. We had fun. The car's outside. I still have money. This is wonderful. So I would drop her off at either her car or back at her home. And she would say, I really had a good time, Tom. Let's do this again. I said, absolutely. And I meant it for that split second. And then she would give me her number, and I would maybe leave it in the car for a while, but it always went out the window. I said, nah, that's not going to happen again. But then Saturday, all day, you can do this, you can do this. You're making too much of this alcoholism. You can drink. Nothing happened last night. You can do this, you can do this. And I'd find myself up there the next day, same bar stool, same Jack Daniels, same beer in front of me, but no woman comes in. And it gets to be 2 o'clock at night, and it's starting to close up. So I would go out, and I love Bill's line in the big book when he says, we seek out the most sordid places on earth. Well, New York's a freak show, folks. You could find, I knew every door to knock on, and I would just go out, and I would wake up, and it would be Tuesday. And I'm like, it's what? It's Tuesday? I'm peeking out the blinds to see where I'm up in the Bronx again. Oh, my God, how'd I get up here? Oh, this ain't good. Reach into my pocket. Oh, I got some money. At least I can get home. 5 ATM slips. I wiped out the bank account. I can't even pay rent. Now I'm like, oh, my God. I look over in the bed. There's a cross-dressing dude there. How did I do that? Again. Went on like that for 5 years. I can't tell you. I mean, the book says it perfectly, but that is mental torture. And I just kept doing it over and over again. And I can't tell you how many bathroom windows I have, bathroom mirrors I have punched or spit in because I couldn't look at myself the next day. And I would stay sober for a period of time. That's why it was 5 years of binging. If you cracked up the car, everybody in my neighborhood gets, it was drinking driving was a hobby, not a felony back then, And so I cracked up like 7 cars in those years. No big deal. A couple of weeks, I'd get back into the bar. I beat up one of those 65-year-old men. I felt horrible about that. That was a month. You wake up with Alex a second time, it's 3 months. That was pretty bad. That was a tough one to swallow. Not swallow. I'm kidding. But that's how life was going. It wasn't looking good for the A-team, And I went out one night, got into a little trouble. But this arrest, hopefully my last arrest, my 6th arrest, was DWI. I blew like a 3.2 on the Richter scale, or whatever they call that thing. And I had a whole bunch of non-conference approved party favors in the back seat. And I had a loaded handgun with me, one in the chamber, because I had some trouble in a bad neighborhood a couple of weeks before, and I was going to go down and do something. And I'm eternally grateful today for the police that caught me, but I was not that night. So here I am in a bad neighborhood about 2 blocks from the New York City high school that I'm supposed to be operating the boilers in at about 15 minutes. And this 21-year-old cop is shaking in his boots, and he's got his boot on my face, and he said, if you move, I'll blow your effing brains out. And the tough guy you got standing here, tears coming down his face, said, you'd be doing me a favor. And they took me to jail. Brooklyn House of Detention. I'm in a cell with 30 guys, and even there I feel different because they all know what they did. I don't even know how I got there. I don't even know how I got the handgun in my belt. The guy that was next to me in the car had a rap sheet longer than anything, and he's doing life for murder right now. This is where I was going and where I was hanging out and doing all these things. I don't know. But like our book tells us, it's darkest before the dawn. And, I did not come to Alcoholics Anonymous right away. I was brought into you folks through a program called TASK, Treatment Against Street Crime. I was given a beeper. I had to give urine samples for a year while my trial was progressing. And if I missed that thing, then I'd go away for an automatic year in jail. I don't do jail. Somebody said that. I heard a guy at a conference one time said, I had to do 5 to 7, but I prison well. I beelined to that guy after the conference, and I said, what do you mean you prison well? He said, they take care of you. It's 3 hots and a con. Never mind. I'm sorry I asked. I walked away. I hear those doors close behind me, and I was built really good back there. I was a pretty good fighter. You close those doors behind me, man. I'm like, where's my mother with my veil? But you can't show that, man. You know they did when you've been in jail. You got to act tough. I'm dying inside in there. Like, let me out of here, But crazy. And, at that point, that woman that I had walked out on 7 years, about 7 years before, was looking for 7 years of back child support. I got these federal felony charges on me. I'm looking at some jail time. And I'm going to that New York City high school every day just thinking, what day, no computers in 95. So when is the paperwork going to get over there and I'm going to get fired from that job? Oh, and by the way, I'm living on mommy's couch again. That's where it was when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I owed $138,000 on the street. I owed a lot more to IRS and credit cards, but what are they going to do? They're going to send a letter to you? Ooh, no, that's not a big deal. But the mob guys, the loan sharks, the bookies and the drug dealers, they wanted their cash. So in early recovery, when I was making my way by bus to all these things I had to do. If a car backfired, I'm jumping over hedges. I'm looking over my shoulder. I can't sit in a little diner or something without my back against the wall. I'm looking where the next exit is if something happens. It was a horrible way to live. And then you go home. How was your day, son? Fine, Mom, fine. I mean, what a life. When I look back at it, I just shake my head. But things progressed, and we went through, and about 10 months, they started reducing all the things I had to do, court obliged. But that gave me more time to think. And guys, it's been suggestion, go to AA, go to AA, go to AA. My first AA meeting was when I had about 10 months of sobriety, or abstinence at that point. Forced white-knuckling abstinence through the court. And I'm proud to tell you I haven't had a drink since my first meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd love to tell you, I loved you guys. I hated you, each and every one of you. And the more you smiled, the more I wanted to hit you. I was not in a smiling mood, you know. And I remember at a men's meeting, we were just talking about this, I think maybe at lunch, some guy said, oh, and next week we have our very own Les celebrating 5 years. And under my breath I said, he's full of it. Nobody could not drink for 5 years. That's just where I was at. But for whatever reason, the miracle of our fellowship got me. And when I was with you guys, I felt good. I didn't have that tightness of chest. You told stories that I thought were much worse than some of mine. But see, my whole life, I was the worst. Now I'm hanging out with the worst. This is cool, you know. And the old guys who are now wearing the suits and jackets, like these guys over here, to the meetings because they're coming straight from work. Now I'm getting to know them, and they had the same type of childhood as me. You mean maybe I could look like that someday? I mean, it opened up just a whole bunch of stuff in my head. And I started to go to more and more meetings. And I had no place to celebrate my first year of sobriety. And a guy, John, said, come to my home group and celebrate. We'll let anybody celebrate. So I celebrated at the Free and Sober group in a hospital on Staten Island. And that group went out. No, I'll never forget this. I was at the meeting the week before. I figured, let me introduce myself to the people I'm going to celebrate with next week, right? And I'm sitting down. I don't know. I'm sitting down next to their secretary. Back then, the secretary notes had to be manually taken. And the guy was skip a mic, and they said, and next week at Free and Sober, we have Tommy T. celebrating 1 year. And Skip says, and he read it. He said, who's Tommy T? And I said, that's me, Skip. He said, well, welcome aboard, Tommy T. And they put on my cake, Tommy the Who. So that was a nickname I had for a little bit in AA. And every one of those home group members brought me a card that next week and wrote something in card. I didn't know people wrote things in cards. I thought you'd throw some money in and throw it at people. You know, that's how I came up. Everybody from my outpatient program came to that meeting. I stood in front of that meeting and I started to cry like a little kid. And I wasn't crying of gratitude. I didn't have gratitude yet. But I realized that I hadn't been sober for a year since I was 11. And that was a little sad. And I started thinking about all the bad things I've done. And it really got to me. Really got to me. Sober, it was hard. You know, I used to tell, the first guy I called sponsor was this guy, John. And I used to tell him, man, this conscience is terrible. You know, I was still lying and cheating and taking shortcuts in early sobriety. But it was bothering me. You guys gave me a conscience. I never had one before. And John, I mentioned John. He was only my sponsor for a couple of months, and he was just a fellowship guy who was just a great listener. He taught me one of the greatest lessons I've ever seen. Many years later, John never did our 12 steps, never got involved in the service structure or any of the service work. And John put a loaded pistol in his mouth, and he was a good man, family man. Blew his brains out. He just couldn't deal with his demons sober for that long. You can die of untreated alcoholism here. And he was a great man, good man. So the paperwork catches up to me. I get fired from the Department of Education. I'm blaming AA and sobriety. I think this is all a bunch of BS. I'm 18 months sober. And I share that at a men's meeting. And here comes this guy. They called him Lucky George. He was a bald-headed bookie from Brooklyn, covered in tats, chewing a cigar that's still in the cellophane. Very bizarre guy, about 5'7". And he says, Tommy, I'm a little worried about you. I think you're going to drink. And I said, George, I'm not going to drink. I said, but if I wasn't such a coward, I'd kill myself. I can't do this. And he looked at me, and looked up at me, and he said, that's a pretty permanent solution to a temporary job problem. Don't you think you're being a little dramatic? I wanted like a hug or a pat on the head. These guys never took it easy on me back then, man. They would call me on my BS all the time, and I am so grateful that they did. And George said to me, he was retired, and I was fired. We both had time. He said, listen, if you're willing to come to my house 2 nights a week and we could read the big book together, and you do what that book tells you to do, I'm not going to tell you anything to do. You do what that book tells you to do, I guarantee you never have to feel this way again. Nobody ever gave me a guarantee in AA or in therapy or in any of the counseling sessions I was in. But this guy was shouting it from the rooftop. I didn't know George just completed step 12 and was making his amends. But this boy was on fire. He was 5 years sober. And he said, I'll cook dinner. After we read, I will give you a little cassette tape that I used to back up my readings. And it was a Joe Hawk from Santa Monica, California, 1990s, walk through the 12 steps. So I had that in my car. And I came into doing the step work saying, I am going to be Rarely. I'm going to be why they use the word Rarely. I'm going to do everything you folks tell me to do. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to see, I'm telling you, I'm different. And I went in there. I had read that book 50 times in early recovery. They told me when I used to say, I can't sleep, man. I'm used to passing out. I can't sleep in recovery. Nobody ever died from insomnia. Read the literature. I'd fall asleep with that big book on my chest all the time. Maybe 3, 4 in the morning when my mind slowed down, get an hour of sleep and go to work. I'll tell you though, I learned later, if you can't sleep with the big book, read our service manual. It'll put you out like a quaalude. I'm telling you. Like I just shot dope or something for crying out loud. But I read it as a story. Sharp guy like me, I didn't even know the steps were contained in there except for the list that they give you. You'd think I would have gotten a clue where it says now it's step 3. I just skimmed over it. And I didn't even read the doctor's opinion. I started on page 1, Bill's story. But reading it with George, and I was the first guy he ever worked with, so he was not a guru. He was not an expert. It was the words on the page. It was the meaning behind the words on the page that got me. He read me the doctor's opinion, and my mouth must have dropped open or something. He said, what's the matter? And I said, I can't believe they wrote this book about me in 1939. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, everything was clicking. Yeah, and he would say, does Tom drink? Essentially because he likes the effects produced by alcohol. I'm like, yeah, well, it's because I can't handle the effects produced by not drinking, but yeah. And I'm ideating with everything he says. And he knew a little bit about my case and about, all the court cases I'm in and not seeing 2 sons and all this. And he would put them in when we're talking about the other steps. And then it just came alive for me. And I couldn't get enough of it. And for the first time in my life, I felt hope. So that was my first step experience, was hope. I'm not weak-willed. I'm not less than as a man. I'm an alcoholic. And I firmly understood that. And we did it for other substances, too. I'm not what I used to say I was. I used to say I'm an addict and an alcoholic just to get the old guys crazy, And but when I went through the 12 steps, I'm not. I'm just a drunk that'll do anything you put in front of me. But that is my addiction. That is what I go back to every time. That is what I just have a mental obsession that is killing you for. So, step 2, you start mentioning God to a guy like me, I don't want to hear it, And, but man, he would say, well, Tom, you're doing a real good job running your life. You don't think like there's anything better than you? We're stuck with you. You're the best there is. Like he put it in layman's terms to where I couldn't argue with him. So I said, I'm willing to believe, George. I believe you believe. That's how I went through if I had to believe in God in step 2, I would be in step 2 right now, if not dead. Because it was the actions of 4 through 9 that made me believe. The 9th step made me believe in God. All the rest of them gave me a little push that way, but the 9th step I felt I was in the hands of God. There was too many freaky things happening that it couldn't be a higher power. When we went to step 3, I had no barn-burning experience in step 3 until I was coming out of step 5. And then I said, wow, that step 3 was pretty powerful. He gave me a book, 9 days. I wrote everything out. 96 resentments. I had 31 resentments for that alcoholic dad, 29 resentments for a mother who would never leave the only man she's ever loved to save poor little Tommy. All right? One loved me too much, the other one didn't love me at all. How do you raise a kid like that? That's got to be a tough parenting gig, you know. And but man, I did it. I did it in 9 days. I had nothing to do. I'd smoke a pack of Marlboros, I'd drink a pot of coffee, and I'd write. But I remember when the directions in the fourth step tells you, we review it carefully. I was like, did I write this? I think there's really power, the power of God, when we pray and put pen to paper. Things come out that we don't want to come out. Things come out that we look at, and this is my experience anyhow, that I looked at and I said, did I do that? Yeah, I did that. I've just been telling myself it's been somebody else's fault my whole life. There was a lot of truth to be seen there. Listen, it's not easy, but you want to know what's worse than doing a fourth step? Is not doing it and reliving it over and over and over for decades. That's tough. Write it down, man. Get it done. If you're new here, just get it done. Listen, it's not a college thesis. You're not going to be scored on it. We don't have a secret little website that's fourthstep.com and we hold up cards and rate you on it. Just write it down. You know, so, and I did that and we looked at fears, and I would have told you that I was fearless back then. You know, I was a good fighter. I got in a lot of trouble. I never cracked. I was good, you know. I went back to him and said, we could have saved a lot of time on this one, man. I'm afraid of everybody and everything, and I've never seen it. But the one that was the most emotional for me was the relationship inventory. I had to be taken through that like a kid by the hand. He said, Tom, just focus on, I know you played in the band up there. I know it was wild times. He said, just focus on substantial relationships. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, oh, geez, Tom, how about you knew the girl's last name? I said, okay, that's something I can work with. So I went through, and I had 23 names on that list in 24 years. And I looked at it and I said, I have been in the same relationship with 23 different women. If you would have asked me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, Tom, why can't you stay in a relationship, or a marriage for that matter, for more than a year? I would have looked you in the face, put my hand on a Bible, and said, I don't know. I always date the crazy ones. They change. They turn on me. I don't know. And I would have passed that lie detector test because that's what I told myself. But when you look at that over and over, so see, there is meaning to that madness of the repetition of writing that stuff. You can't deny it. I showed up as the same guy with 23 different women, and the result was the same. And I finally saw, well, maybe it had a little something to do with it. That's the best I could do back then, right? And but then we wrote an ideal. I always kept my ideals. I keep my ideals today. When I got married to Cheryl years back, I wrote a married man's ideal. It's in the top of my drawer. I'll read it all the time. If not, Cheryl will grab it out and read it to me once in a while just to point me back on track in a couple of areas, you know. But it's what we do, and it just starts to set the framework. You go into 6 and 7, you're talking about character defects and shortcomings and what's this and what's that. Can't get too deep in that when you're new. I mean, I couldn't. I didn't understand it. You know, I look at a character defect today as something I shouldn't be doing. And a shortcoming is something that I should be doing that I'm not doing. I keep it real simple. And I didn't do any super special work in 6 and 7. 2 paragraphs in the book. How important could it be? But I said the 7-step prayer every day, and I moved into 8 and 9, and then the magic started to happen for me. You know, you sit with those 23 women, and you make amends to them. You don't want to be that guy anymore. Sit with 100 people and tell them what a liar and a thief you are. You don't want to be a liar and a thief anymore. And things started to gradually change for me. It was an amazing, amazing experience. And I will tell you about a couple of amends, because I balked on amends. The money that I had projected in my head, because I got interesting thing. I know the mob cause they have a VIG. That VIG is non-forgiving, you know, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be $1 million. Crazy, you know, but I got myself whipped into a frenzy over it. And what do you do if you're a guy like me in Alcoholics Anonymous and you want to balk in your step work? I stopped going to the meeting George goes to that I meet with him every week at. Right? I don't call him. No cell phones. Can't track me down. I just don't want to answer the phone at home. I'll let it go to the little cassette recorder answering machines we had back then, and then I'll throw the tape out. No big deal. I got another one. And go to a beginner's meeting. Share that you're 18 months sober and you're in the 9th step. Almost everybody there will tell you, you're moving too fast. At least on Staten Island in 1995. We were don't drink and go to meetings community back then. And I was like, yes, I knew it, you know. I'm telling you folks, 10, 14 days, I'm looking to kill myself again. Because now I have the list. Now I've seen my faults. Now I know the truth, and I'm not doing anything about it. Bad place to be. I'm standing in front of that beginner's meeting with 4 of my road dogs. We're smoking Marlboros. We're eyeing up the newcomer girls as we do. And we were rating them back then. I know. This guy comes back, 30 years sober, postman, old guy, Tommy. He said, Tommy, I heard you doing the 12 steps with George. I said, well, yes, I am. I puffed my chest out a little bit. He says, would you like to speak at St. Mark's Step this weekend? I said, absolutely, man. I'm good AA. I'll do that. And he says, well, we're speaking on 8 and 9. I kind of cringe a little bit, you know, and I said, well, I made a list, but I haven't made any amends. I'll have to get you on the next rotation. He just patted me on the back. See, I don't hear messages from God. Somebody talked about messages from God before, but I hear them through you guys all the time. This guy patted me on the back. He said, make a few amends. You got a few days. Let us know how they turned out. And he walked away. But then my 4 friends said, oh, and we'll be there to watch. So now it's like game on. I get in my car, and I'm like a 3-year-old kid afraid to tell Daddy something. I got to call George. I got home, and I called George, and I was so afraid. It's embarrassing how afraid I was at 36 years old. And George picked up the phone and said, how you doing, pal? I've been praying you'd call. I was like, I said, George, man, I'm sorry I ditched you. I'm just full of fear. But I got to do some review of that steps 8, 9. I don't tell him I have to speak at the group. I just tell him I need to get back into. I told him that when I got to his house. He said, come on over. I'm putting on coffee. Where do you get that? Where do you get that? You know, I had a heart problem last year and went to a doctor and they diagnosed me with a condition that I needed to get an operation on. He said, we can do it in December or November. I said, it's August, Doc. I could die 3 times before that. I can't even get a haircut on Staten Island without an app and an appointment for like 2 weeks from now. Call a member of AA in good standings with a problem. Come on over. I'm making coffee. He had a wife and kids. You know, went right over the house. We reviewed 8 and 9. He said, Tommy, why don't you just start with your parents? I said, all right. Next day, I'm talking to my mom. And I got to tell you, if you're stuck in amends and you can't start with Mom. If your mom's alive, please start with Mom. She was wonderful. My resentments for my mother all stem from the fact that I couldn't, you know, she didn't have left my father and took me away from that. And I cried my eyes out to her and I told her, Mom, I'm so sorry. I stole so much money. I don't even know how much it is. It's somewhere between $25,000 and $50,000 over the years. I mean, I used to hit them hard. And I was the guy you asked to speak here. I'm doing the commando crawl in my 20s just to get to the purse. I pushed her down a couple of times when she was trying to stop me from going out. Lied to her, cheated from her. I didn't even remember or know the problems we caused until I was a parent. The lost sleep, the bad days at work, the lost me. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't do anything when your kid's in trouble. I was always in trouble. I can't imagine what that woman went through. And she got quiet, and we were trained real well back then, you know. We were right out of the book. And well, these are the harms I'm clear on, Mom. Is there anything that you'd like to tell me that I'm not aware of? And she said, oh, you left out a bunch, son. I took a breath, and I started saying that 7-step prayer. My mother, once again, just shocked me, and she just started to tell me the good things that I've done in my life. When she was sick, nobody else from our family, we're a very small family, came to see us. She said, you always visited. You always asked for money, but you always visited. She said, and when you got older, you tried to step in the middle of the fights between me and Dad. You were my protector. I could always count on you. When I needed you, you were there. You weren't always there, but when I needed you, you were there. And she said, and son, I know you were taking that money, but I thought if it could get you out of this house for even a night and relieve some of the pain that I saw you were in, it was worth it. 29 resentments fell from me that day, and I became my mother's best friend. I didn't care if I was living with Mom. I was proud to be living with Mom. Mom got sick. She had MS. She went into a wheelchair. For the first 5 to 6 years of my recovery, after going through the 12 steps, I put my mother in the bed every night at 11 o'clock. And if I wasn't going to be home for some reason, there wasn't many, but I would have someone do it. I would put her little doggie that I bought her in the bed with her. She'd have cigarettes and soda next to her. And then I'd get her up in the morning, and her attendant would come in, and then I'd go to work. And she would call me 10, 12 times a day telling me she needed something she didn't need, and I'd go get it. And the later years, there was changing diapers. Things a son shouldn't have to do, but I did willingly because I had guys in my home group telling me what to do. Even sober, I need adult supervision. I don't know. How do you figure that stuff out? You know? When she died, I held her hand. And I said, it's okay. And she just said, I'm going home. And I said, I know, Mom. It's wonderful. I had 7 years with my mother. I don't know if that does away with her. 35, I tortured her, but, you know, it makes it palatable to me. I could visit that stone without regret. I can kiss it. I'll leave my anniversary coin there. Tell her I'm doing good. Dad was a different case. Dad was drinking 3 times a day. He got 3 different loads on. You know, he'd had his morning load, take a nap at lunch, come back, get the afternoon load on, go back, and then the night load. So I had to try to find a lucid interval. And I met him in this little horrible bar. I said, Dad, you got a minute? Sure. What's up? What, do you need money? No, Dad, I don't need money. I go through our little spiel, tell him what a bad son I was. I said, Dad, I stole a lot of money. I said, I have no idea how much. He said, $12,664. I got a book, he said. Told me about all the times I embarrassed him being his son. It was a tough one to listen to. So I had switched sponsors at that point because we finished 10, 11, and 12 with George, and George wasn't making all of his amends. He wasn't writing nightly reviews. He wasn't doing a lot of things that the book told me to do. And he encouraged me to follow somebody that was doing this thing. And I'm in a meeting on Staten Island, and it was great. There was a guy, Angry Joe, on Staten Island. He was a biker dude, big, burly, red beard, food in it and stuff, doesn't shower as much as he should. He's got the chaps and the Harley Davidson headband on. And if he sat next to you, you'd get up and get coffee and then sit somewhere else, you know. And he would take the meeting hostage, and don't even try to put a timer on this guy because he'll just fight you to take the timer away, you know. And he was going through 17 years sober, dry drunk, bad guy. And I'm sitting in this meeting, and it was an 11-step meeting. And here comes this guy, walks in, flannel shirt, like chinos on, and those nice little brown penny loafers the guys wear and all. Red hair parted on the side, horn-rimmed glasses. I don't even know the guy. He sits down, raises his hands. He says, I'm Joe K., and I'm an alcoholic. Angry Joe. Starts sharing about his prayer and meditation practice, and that he was writing nightly review, and something came to him in his inventory, and he's going back to college to become a Montessori kindergarten teacher. He's done with Harley Davidson. He can't do the fist fighting anymore and all of this. And I didn't know Joe was going through the 12 steps on the other side of the island at the same time I was. I was only 18 months sober, but I'm sitting there, I'm saying, I'm having an experience over here, but that's sick. I make a beeline to Joe, and I said, will you sponsor me? He said, if you're willing to do what the book tells you, I'm definitely in. I said, I'm definitely in. And I was with Joe for 25 years. Best thing. We grew up together in this. He was older than me. He was sober a lot longer than me. But, man, he was great. He was great. And he kept me on track. Now, I've gone off track here in Alcoholics Anonymous, too. But he told me to go to my father and not only give him the money, but he said, I want you to spend an hour every time you drop that money off. If you told him, what'd you tell him? I said, 50 a week. He said, I want you to give him 100. Make it work. And spend an hour with him, regardless of what's going on, every week. 11 o'clock every Saturday for 2 years, I went to my father with 100 or more, and I sat there, and my father would rip me up. I was following in his footsteps in the career. You're never going to be an engineer. They're never going to get you the job back. This is that. You ruined the good thing and this and that. And I would sit there, take a beating, give him the money, but here's the sarcasm, or I don't know if that's the right word, of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm still pretty big and strong back then. My father's getting frail and weak, and he hated anybody that hugged or kissed, you know. So every day after I'd listen to that for an hour, I'd grab him by the back of the neck and say, I love you, Dad. And he'd try to pull back, but he couldn't. That was my little, you know, on the way out. And, but I paid him back. And one day I went in there, he wasn't there. He had some bleeding issues in the stomach, and bartender said, Tom, just hang out a second, I want to talk to you. And I said, what's up? I said, where's Pops? He said, look, don't get upset. He's just got an ulcer. He didn't take his medication. He was bleeding. He went home. He was really sorry. He was going to miss you. He said, you know, it's the highlight of his week when you come in. And I said, you'd never know it by the conversation we had. He said, listen, I tell him every week, will you lighten up on the kid? He's coming to see you. He's the only one that does. What are you doing? Why are you trying to push him away? And he said, your father told me how proud he is of you. I said, well, I've never heard those words. I said, you probably won't. He says, but he brags to you, brags about you, and he brags about AA to all my customers, to the point it's getting annoying. You don't want to be talking the AA talk in that kind of bar, you know? And it was enough for a while. You know, but same story. When Dad got sick, I was the one with him. I was the one holding his hand. We're okay. Took me a lot of work, but we're okay. He did the best he could. I got worse than him in a shorter period of time. When I wrote that fourth step on my dad, I realized I was worse than him. I knew my father. I got two sons that didn't know me at that point when I wrote it. The truth sets you free here, folks. Might be a little difficult to face. It's harder to hide from it. You know, and I started working with Joe on 10 and 11, and that's the way I live my life today. And, you know, Joe said to me at one point, he looked at my list, and I don't know, I had 100 and something amends I was making. I was doing good. I was up in the 80s or something. And he said, Tom, don't you have to make an amends to the Department of Education? I said, oh, geez, Joe, come on, man. They're not even on the list. He said, well, they deserve to be. You worked for them for 17 years, and you were really not a good employee. And I said, all right. He gave me directions. Go find the CEO of the Division of School Facilities and tell him your deal. I said, well, I just interviewed with him 6 months ago because of the arrest. He said, well, then you know where to go. Put on a suit, get there early, and be ready to do the deal. So I went up and I did that. I went at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was scared as hell because my case was still pending. And I don't know that the bosses get in at 10 o'clock. Joe would have me do stupid stuff with, take God with you. When you get in the car, open the passenger door, let God in. Close the passenger door. When you get out, open the door, let God out. You know, anything to get me moving, you know. And I did that. Jim comes walking in, 10 o'clock, big man, 6'6", glasses. And I said, Jim, Tom Taracco. And he said, yeah, I know. Tommy T, Guns and Drugs. Yeah, your file's on my desk. He said, I'm not the guy that can get you the job back. You're wasting your time. I said, I'm not here for that, Jim. I just like a couple minutes of your time. And he said, well, in that case, come on in. Now I walk in, and there's 2 chairs by the desk. One for me, one for God. I'm like, we got this. I'm believing the corny stuff at this point. Like I'm 80 amends in, you know. And I sit down with Jim, and I just open up. Just come out with the truth. Jimmy, when I talked to you 6 months ago, I lied about everything but my name. They were my drugs. I just bought them. It was my gun. I was going to go shoot somebody. And that's my 3rd DWI. You don't know about the other 2. That's interesting. I said, well, I wish it could stop there, but I'm a member of AA, and I got this thing they call a sponsor, and he tells me I got to tell you the whole truth. For 17 years, I have stolen time, material. I've punched other employees in and out on the job. I've been drunk as a skunk in the boiler room. I have slept through entire shifts. I have had parties in New York City schools, elementary schools. They were good parties, too. I mean, I just let it fly. And he said, well, you know, Tommy, there's nothing you can do for me, because I asked him if there's anything I could do to make it right. He said, but if you get that job back, you come back and see me, and we'll try to square this account. I said, okay, I'll do that. My case was stalled for about 8 months, and I finally get a letter maybe 20 days after I saw Jim, something like that, certified letter saying that they're going to hear my case. And Joe tells me, you got to get yourself an AA folder. I said, what's that? He said, all those completion certificates you got. I'll give you a letter, get George to write your letter, get the home group members to write your letter, get your sponsees to write your letter. I got all these nice letters. I have alcoholic awareness certificates of graduation, 3 of them. I didn't learn much, but I graduated 3 times. And I got them all, and this folder's about this thick. I bring it with me, and I celebrate 2 years sober. And he says, and you take your 2-year coin and you put it in your pocket. And if you think you're going to lie about anything, you just rub that coin. And you just tell them the truth, Tom. God's got this. Whether you work in the Department of Ed or not. And I'm working now. I'm doing roofing and siding. I'm paying my bills. So I'm really okay with it. But I want the job back, folks, I'm telling you. And we were suing for the union job back. The union did all the legal work. And I go into this thing, and the attorneys pounded me for 2 hours on the stand. And I don't think that they've ever heard testimony from somebody in amends at Alcoholics Anonymous, because they were like, really? Like that kind of answers from the attorneys. And I was telling them, well, we need to know the details. Well, I'm sorry. When I drink, I black out. It's just one of the symptoms I have. And I don't remember too much of anything. I know that doesn't discount it. But I'm going to assume it was my gun. I don't have a certificate of possession for the gun. But, I had a gun. It was with me. Yeah, it's mine. It was my 3rd DWI. Oh, you had 2 more? Yes, sir. In 1986. And, I gave them everything. I was just telling them everything. And when the last question they asked me was, are you telling us you have not ingested any drugs or alcohol since April 8th, 1995? And I said, that was the day I was incarcerated. Yeah, that's true. And he said, And I said, well, there's 2 things. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to hear my case. And I'm okay, fellas, whichever way this goes. I'm just appreciative that this is going to be over one way or another. I said, but there's 2 things I'm not willing to give you today. And they said, what's that? They thought I was going to be sarcastic or something. I said this, and I pulled out my 2-year coin. They said, what's that? I said, it's a 2-year medallion for sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not willing to give this up over a job. And with that, the arbiter, the guy that was taking over the case, he looks at me and gives me a wink. I don't know if he was sweet on me or if he was one of us, but I don't care. He just smiled and, And then I said, and the other is my integrity, because Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps has given me that back. My sponsor told me to say that. I couldn't come up with that. And he said, well, thank you very much. 5 minutes, they come back with a ruling. And they said, we have rarely seen a person that has been as honest as you up here, to the point where we think you could have hurt your case a little bit. But the guy said, but then there's this AA file. We were in there for 5 minutes reading your notes. We've never seen anything like that. We really admire the fact that you're helping young men and trying to turn your life around the way you want. He said, you've done everything we've asked you to do, so we're going to give you the union job back. And I said, okay, that's wonderful. I want to jump out of the chair and do a backflip. I probably could have still done one at that point, not now. But then they said, but if you can stay clean for a year, we're going to give you that promotion that you were looking at. I said, okay. Oh, my God. Don't laugh. And then they said, we're going to give you $17,000 in back pay. Now, I've heard a lot of AA amends stories. Very rare to see money flowing this way in that process. But so all the money I kept my head afloat with, first of all, I didn't know $138,000. Many of those guys I went to said, don't worry about it. I found Jesus in jail. That was Satan's money. You don't owe me anything. Or we made a lot of money together, Tommy, but the past is past. So I'm getting myself out of debt. I used that $17,000 to pay off the rest of the debts. It was just an amazing, amazing process. I never felt like God had me living on my mother's couch the way I did back then. If I had a bill for $800 due on a Thursday, I got a $900 side job on Wednesday. And that went on through the whole process, through the steps, and through that court appearance. Now I got my job back. I go back to Jim. And Jim tells me, he said, I didn't tell you last time you were here, but I'm a deacon. No Google, no cell phones back then. I don't know what a deacon is. I'm not a religious guy. But he gave me a hint. He said, I do service at a church. And he said, my thing is alcohol too. We don't find God because things are good. He said, it's wonderful what you did. So you go back there and work for God. and you help young guys that are struggling. You work through your lunch hour. You get in early. You do. And I just followed his direction. I progressed through that thing. Every 3 years, I got a promotion. Just went through. Jim retired about 20 years ago. I got his job as the boss. I just retired. I'm going to be self-supporting through my own contributions. It's a joke. I can't even say it without laughing. But it's just, and it's a routine story here in Alcoholics Anonymous. So there's only one thing that I try to accomplish with coming up here and speaking to you folks, that there's somebody there new that thinks they have a secret that's too dirty, that's too shameful, a mistake they made that they could never make right. I have not heard of one that couldn't be made right in some way, shape, or form here. Don't hide from it anymore. That's the biggest thing. You're with us now. It's going to be okay. God's got you if you're in this room today. I want to thank everybody on the committee again for having me. What a wonderful event this has been. And we're just getting warm. I'm just warming up for the big shot tonight. So this is a good deal. So thanks a lot, folks.
All over the place.